Is there any difference between product and a project? In this current world, which is more relevant?
Nobody cares end of the day if your company is not going to be profitable. Which means
AI coming into picture here. How is it going to evolve?
No one is forcing anybody to shift from. Company can set a goal themselves that we want to satisfy only the stakeholders. But if you do not have a customer, how are you going to satisfy your stakeholders is a big question.
Hello everyone, welcome to Scrum Studios. In this podcast, we're going to talk about product versus project, the battle of mindsets. I have Venkat with me to talk about this. Hi Venkat.
Hi.
Is there any difference between product and a project?
Okay, so by the terminology itself, you know that there is a difference, right? Project versus product. The way how we manage the project is going to be totally different from how we manage products.
Okay.
In simple terms, the success of the project is measured differently, whereas the success of the product is measured totally different. I can give you one more example. When you start a project, you will have a definite start and end date, right? That is decided even before you start your project. But when it comes to product, you will have a definite start date, but you cannot say this is the definite end date for any products. So that's the fundamental difference for us to get our conversation going.
Okay. I would like to talk about on the success side of things as well. Since you talked about there is a definite start date and end date, whereas the product doesn't have one. So is it safe to say that in projects, the success is defined upfront, saying that the scope is being fixed, time is being fixed, and cost is being fixed. And at the end of the project, you need to meet all these things. Whereas product, it's not that way. So how do you look at that?
Okay. So typically, right, you can even totally measure the project success differently and you still call it project. That's a different attribution error. So when you say something as a project, it is more about internal orientation, right? Internally, I'm able to meet the scope, meet the cost, meet the time. So the success is often internal. When it comes to product, the success is often attributed to the external world. That is, what is the value that I deliver to the customers? How much of the customer absorption I was able to meet? Do I have uses for my product? And etc. So the product success measurement is going to be totally different. It's going to be more external orientation, external oriented, which means the success is going to be measured by the market share, not by the internal metrics that we are trying to define.
Okay. Now, since that you said project is internal orientation, more of an internal orientation, whereas product is external orientation. In this current world, which is more relevant?
Obviously, right? The external orientation is very much relevant. Nobody cares how you run your company, what are the different processes that you establish, what are the different measures that you take to motivate your employees. Of course, it matters, but nobody cares end of the day if your company is not going to be profitable. Which means your customers are the one who is going to make you profitable. So the companies or the organizations taking more and more external orientation will have aligned their internal orientation accordingly so that the chances of they being successful in the market going to be higher.
Okay. So is it safe to say that rather than you fixing the internal orientation and then aligning to the external stuff, you look at the external orientation first, then align your internal orientation accordingly? That will help your organization move towards product mindset or be relevant to the current world.
Yeah. So I wouldn't call that as a product mindset. I would still say that one of the crucial things to reach there, when you have a battle of mindsets, one of the steps that you can take to reach there is to orient yourself based on the external factors.
Okay. So now that AI coming into picture here, how is it going to evolve?
Again, see, when we talk about AI, projects, products, does nothing to do with AI. Projects can get benefited by AI and even products can get benefited by AI. So it depends on where you want to place AI in this whole game, right? So companies who are trying to really thrive in the age of AI is going to leverage or complement AI wherever it makes sense.
Okay.
For that, you need to have the right strategy, which we spoke in one of the other podcasters. And then you need to see where AI is going to be beneficial to you and where AI is not going to be beneficial. Because AI is just a tool.
Yeah.
It is not going to create, or it's not going to give you a magic wand where you're going to be successful. You can still adopt all the AI tools. Still, you can be a big failure. Right? You can leverage wherever it makes sense. Still, you can be successful. So it all depends on what problem you're trying to solve and where you are trying to fit the AI.
Okay. Since you said what problems you're trying to solve, I'll tie it back to the project and a product. So even when we start a project, we are thinking about a problem to solve. Same case with a product as well. Now, how does it differ when we do the project mindset?
Yeah, good question. See, when you start a project, you might fix a problem statement and then you might fix that problem statement forever.
Okay.
You would say, this is the problem I'm going to solve for the next 2 years. But market might change. The problem might evolve. The problem sometimes doesn't make sense. Right? Are you adapting enough to say that, yes, I am responsive enough to adapt my plans? In project, it's a big no, because everybody knows that project plans are fixed. And when it comes to product, the evolving mindset is going to be the key. We don't know the problem statement completely. The problem statement itself might evolve. And I'm going to start off with where I am, and I'm going to continuously evolve so that I create adaptive solutions that's going to help me stay relevant.
Okay, makes sense. Now, again, in most of the industries, now we are in an era where it's just shifting from a project mindset towards a product mindset. I see most organizations, product managers to be very well experienced, who have day in, day out worked in project ways of working. And they feel that whatever they have been doing till now worked for them. And it's very hard to let go of those practices. Are there any specific skills that they need to acquire to let go of it and then come to the product mindset? Any thoughts on that?
Okay, see, no one is forcing anybody to shift from project to product mindset. It's a choice, right? You can still be in a project environment. You can have all the legacies. Somebody might spend enough budget. You can still be a failure and move on to the next project. But you can look at the market, what is happening. You can pick the skills that is required for you to orient yourself into the product environments. And you can start off with a simple change. First of all is the awareness. Am I doing the right thing here, or am I doing the things right? Right? When you approach things from a project perspective, I want to keep everything on schedule. I want to keep everything right. But are you keeping the right things right? Is the big question that somebody should ask.
Okay.
So start with the awareness that whatever I'm doing, does it make sense? Does it make sense to my customers? Are we really adding value? Or we are battling a lot in terms of keeping everything on schedule and we are trying to satisfy the internal stakeholders alone. Of course, that is absolutely fine. A company can set a goal themselves that we want to satisfy only the stakeholders. But if you do not have a customer, how are you going to satisfy your stakeholders is a big question. And the reason many companies are stuck is because it's a complex variable, right? It is not like you throw a stone into the pond, immediately you get a reaction. The success or a failure that you get out of the companies is going to be later. You're going to realize the success or failure a little slower. So some companies might get stuck and some companies will be able to break the inertia and come out.
Okay.
We have seen some great companies in the past who were leaders but still filed bankruptcy.
Yeah. Let's take this a little forward. Now I'm going to ask you, what are the skills, or you talked about awareness as well. Any tools for them to use to get their awareness, or basically the skills or tools what they can use to move forward?
Okay. See, one thing that I would recommend called leadership circle.
Mm-hmm.
This is not only for leadership,
Mm.
as the name sounds, leadership circle. So it's a circle of creative and reactive ways of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I would strongly recommend people to leverage more creative instincts, because the creative instincts will help you get systemic awareness and also relate your individual personalities with the system, so that you know what you contribute is going to make sense to the system, and what is the impact that you are trying to create. Does it create value in the ecosystem?
Okay. So when you said awareness, it's about your systemic awareness.
Yeah.
So any tool specific to that they
No,
can use? Or
nothing
any
as such.
technique as such?
So the technique is try to list the number of things that you do and map into two quadrants. One is assumptions, the other one is reality.
Yeah.
And you have a self-check where you score higher. Number of things you write and say, am I assuming too many things here? Or is that a reality? So if you are able to compare these two, if the reality quadrant is higher, probably you are heading towards the right direction. If your assumptions quadrant is a bit higher, which means you got to do a lot of work to move towards reality quadrant.
Nice. Now let's come back to the question again. Now you talked, in a nutshell, so we talked a lot about how there is a lot of battle between these two mindsets and how industry is evolving, how people needs to evolve, leadership needs to evolve. Now, what's it for the teams?
Okay, good question. So if you take any teams, they think that whatever the work that I do, it's going to be within my team, in my system, it works, or somebody tests and they are going to report back whether there are bugs. Teams will have to go one step ahead, understand what is the vision, what is the goal, how does it impact the end customers? We are developing something. How does it impact the end customer? What problem it solves for the end consumer? If everybody in the company is able to think in those languages, then that is truly a positive change for the teams to move towards the right mindset.
Okay, that's the gap I see in the industry, right? So teams are not being briefed about what's exactly the vision is, what's the value that we are delivering. Is how are you looking at it? So is it like the leadership that you talked about? Is it like an inclusive leadership that they need to do? You talked about creative leadership for the leaders to think creatively about the solutions. Does it also make us move towards an inclusive leadership as well? So people have to include everyone in their circle.
Yeah. When we talk about creative leadership, we also talk about relatedness, right? Whether you are able to relate whatever you set as a vision, goal, strategic focus, you are able to relate people together.
Okay.
So that's also part of creativeness. And there is something called decentralized strategy that's going to come up in the future, where strategy is no more centralized, where a bunch of people in a boardroom is going to create strategy and communicate to people. It's going to be a distributed strategy where everybody is going to be a part of strategy.
Okay.
Right? And that's evolving now, but I foresee that it's going to be the trend in the future.
Okay. So would you like to summarize the thoughts that you've been talking about?
Yes. So product versus project in terms of mindset is a project certainty mindset. Everything is going to be certain. Things are going to go well. Success is measured by internal orientation. And when it comes to product, I embrace uncertainty. Things are going to change often. And I'm going to be adaptive. And I don't have answers for everything now. I'm going to emerge those answers. That's a nutshell.
Okay. Thank you, Venkat. I took a lot of insights from your thoughts. If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.